being 7 o'clock, I call the July 17th, 2018 Ossipee Planning Board meeting to order. Please join me in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Stephen Condict.
Yeah.
Rick St. Jean.
Yep.
Martha Eldridge. Here. Tim Otterbach.
Here.
Peter Zavas, who is he? Dennis Legendre.
Here.
Roy Barron.
Yeah.
Condict Billings.
Here. Minutes of July 3rd.
Make a motion, we accept. Second.
Made, seconded, discussion. All those in favor? Motion carries. Budget looks very well. At this point,
We just had a last minute item
ooh,
come in. We're over here.
Steve.
have a bill from Sager and Smith for $105. I make a motion that we approve it.
Second.
Made, seconded, any discussion?
What's it for?
Legal research and email to and from Laura, potential conflicts of interest in planning board members.
Does it have an RSA with it?
No, it doesn't. This is just a bill. That's all it is a statement. Any other discussion?
Did we see the opinion generated on that?
This is just a
Well, I
statement.
understand that, but I'm asking, can
I have
the
not
board,
seen any opinion. All I'm asking is that you pay the bill. Nothing about the,
Well, if we don't have a written opinion, what good's the bill?
well, I think we have to pay the bill.
it is RSA 673-14 and 673-14-2. And basically it was about my reclusing myself. Want to read the opinion? That's fine. Motion's on the floor, call for vote. All those in favor? Motion carries. We've still got 72% of our budget left after 6 months, so I think we're in good shape.
In other words, I can vote. You can tell.
Unsatisfied conditions,
We have,
it says here 7/17, Century to complete installation within the next day or two.
it's Verizon, yes.
Is that correct, Steve?
Excuse me?
Says on 7/17, Century to complete installation within the next day or two,
The riding store.
correct.
They're waiting for some parts, supposedly it's gonna be done this week. I've got letters from Carl himself, if it's not within 15 days, he's recommended cease and desist.
Well, it's been on the boat since November.
And we've been working on it since, sir.
Yeah. All right. There was nothing else on the unsatisfied at this time. On the new business case number 18-1, site plan review, amendment. The granary wishes to have a continuance until August 21st, 2018, so that they may obtain all the approvals. We've never told them when they had to have this done.
Do we need a motion for continuance, or did they just okay anyways?
I think they were actually hoping to come back for the 7th, and that's why they asked for a continuance.
Yeah, but if we didn't put a deadline to begin
We
with.
didn't put a deadline on them. This way, we never do on a conditional. Yeah, Scott,
Now he calls 2 days late.
they have their letter from the fire chief. And they have the letter from DES. Which is the off the range. And they are not requiring an amendment or a new permit. So those two satisfied. The only thing they're waiting for is septic. So I make a motion that we take the granted pending condition number 3 alteration of terrain, copy notification response letter they have received, so I make a motion to take that off our list.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded, and discussion. Call for vote, all those in favor? Motion carries. Case number 18-2 subdivision. Andy Hirsch, senior owner of 95 Lake Hill Road, tax map 223, lot 203, authorized agent is Jeffrey Hurdle, and surveyor Randy Otis of Geometric Blue Hills LLC is requesting subdivide 70 acres into 4 lots. We have a letter from Brad Harriman saying that at this time, the location of each driveway and any culvert drainage requirements would be determined when a building permit is applied for. So, make a motion that we accept the subdivision application as conditional.
I'll second.
I have several things that, I have not received a letter from the fire chief. One. The other question I have, wetlands was only 300 feet, and you're back some places quite a distance. Why only 300 feet? The public works has been outlined. There is no topo 200 feet beyond boundaries. The signature block is incorrect on the plans.
There was a block on there.
Huh?
I thought there was a block on there.
There's one line, date and one line. Who is presenting?
I am.
Please state your name.
Yes, sir. My name's Van Hertel. I'm the owner of the property,
Okay.
and I'm representing myself. Randy Ovis, a surveyor from Farmington, wasn't able to come. And I did, as you mentioned and read, I did go in and talk with Brad Harriman, and he felt that there was adequate sight distance on every lot for a driveway, and that would be determined when somebody builds. And one other thing we did do, on the plan that you have, I don't know if you were all given,
Yeah, we have one.
some of the plans do have topography. And I wanted to turn this into you. We turned some in with topography.
There's multiple pages,
There's
so.
multiple pages. We
Yeah.
have it, but the thing I said, the topography is supposed to go 200 feet beyond your boundaries.
Yes, okay.
And you only have the photography within your bounds.
That's correct. Okay, so you'd like it 200 feet beyond?
That's what the application.
Okay, I didn't realize.
What happens if the next landowner says they can't go on their property?
No, they can still topo it. Yeah,
That would
Yeah.
all make sense to me.
well,
Well, we can do that. The idea, the acreage actually came out 65 acres, and we're splitting it into 4 lots. And that's the reason, like, we could just make them, say, 3 5-acre lots and one big piece out back, but we really wanted to give the buyer more acreage such that they'd have areas to get cordwood, snowmobile, hiking. It just didn't seem to make sense to shorten up the lots, but it averages 4 lots and 65 acres. And we did do test pits. Some of the earlier topo map didn't show test pits on lot 3-1 and 3-2, but we do have those done, and I have those to turn into the board.
They're on these plans.
they're on the plan.
Yes, but on this plan, there was 2 of them that were right near the boundary line.
Oh, I see. We
So
don't
I,
have.
yeah, so I didn't like that. I thought they should make sure that each lot was good and buildable.
Yep,
So we had them go back
all right.
Okay.
and would anybody else like one that shows
Yeah,
that?
How
you ought
far
to-
back did you go, sir?
Yes, well, the scale is 1 inch to, 1 to 80, so we're back about 160 feet. Yeah, so we did, these 2 are new test pits. There's copy for you. Yeah. And I do have the test pit results, came out very satisfactory. Would anybody else like a copy of it this end? It shows it a little better with the contour. In with, we had 6 test pits initially, but then we did 2 more, test pits 7 and 8. And it came out very good. It's pretty good soils up in the area. So we did that, and
Do you have any wetlands in the back?
nothing substantial, no. No areas that's over maybe half an acre. The soil scientist walked all along the road, and he actually put this note on the plan.
I know he only went 300 feet.
Yes, he
And
did.
you're going back over 1,000 feet.
That's right. Well, he did the wetlands in the areas where somebody might build or could easily build. We really aren't sure where somebody might choose to build, but we know that.
That's the problem that I'm having with just the front looked at, because someone could buy lot 3 and build way back here.
They still have to have this test pits, everything else has to be done, so that's really not our problem.
Well, we wanted to make sure that the lots were buildable, and if somebody wants to build in a different location, they'd have to do future test pits where they want to build, and then they would have to do maybe wetlands in the area that could be part of the septic design. But we weren't able to test pit the whole acreage, but we found that there is several places along the road where it's within 300 feet, and it looks pretty
10
good.
years, we've asked more than one test pit in any given lot.
That's outside of our site. That's
Yeah.
outside of the site.
So he did walk them over thoroughly, to make sure they were all buildable. If anybody wanted to build in a different spot, then they'd have to submit to the state and show that.
So anyway, you put a test pit, that's what the leach field has to be.
That's right.
If they want to move the spot, that's their problem.
Yeah, that's right.
They'll have to go through DES anyway.
That's
Yeah.
not our problem.
Right.
We can't make them do more than one test pit.
Right.
I'm not saying that.
So we did that. The other reason why you asked about the length of the lots, the idea of having them like 12 and 13 acres is such that somebody could build on an acre or two and keep 10 acres in current land use. So I think that's an advantage. And I think it goes along with the idea of having larger acreage lots and minimal number of homes per acre.
I agree, I don't think the size of lots are business either, it's just really illegal and that's all.
Yeah.
I don't see an issue with that at all.
Sure.
At the Eldridge Cemetery.
I'm not aware of any cemeteries on that
That's
land.
right
Just
there.
that one here.
Yeah, there is a cemetery on it, yeah.
Well, you just can't do it in 25 feet when they build, that's all.
100.
At 100 feet building, but 25 feet excavation, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. That's why on that lot, it's 15 acres. 15.2 acres, we did 3 test beds, so.
Yes, not a problem for this guy, you just got 100 feet around here, 2 inches around that, you can't build, that's all.
Right, yeah.
Oh, inch and a half thereabouts.
Yeah.
It's still not a problem. Which road's White Hill?
White straight up. Bill's Pond, the white straight up.
Goes up the backside of
Oh, okay, yeah. I know
when
where
you
it
come
is.
down for your parents' place.
Yeah, were you in last fall for somebody?
Yes, my nephew was.
Oh, okay, I
Yeah,
remember now.
Yeah, my nephew presented the idea and kind of went over it with the idea of the larger lots and kind of minimal land use, and the board seemed to be reasonably, with the idea of that.
You do want to let whoever buys that property know that
somebody wants to visit the cemetery, they do have to allow them to go see it.
Oh, yes, there's a right of way for that, yeah, yeah, there is, and I think that's on the notes of the survey. Yeah, yeah, anybody can look at the cemetery and maintain them. Yeah.
There's nothing in these notes on the first page.
Note 8.
Yep.
Top box number 8.
On which copy?
Top page.
Just says burial ground as shown. On this, that's all it says.
Yeah, he probably should have put I think that's a good idea. He should have put a reference, the RSA, and also confirm the right-of-way. Make that a part of the public record. That's a good thought. That's a good point.
Well, and that's part of our conditions anyway, when they comply with all state regulations, one of them is providing access to the cemetery.
But if it's noted on the plans, whoever buys lot 3-3,
Can cause headaches.
Yeah.
Yep.
it'll be in the deed.
Right, right.
There was a letter in here from an individual across the street, across the road, that was concerned. That is
He's
steep.
right here.
Oh, he's here, okay. I just want to make sure that was noted. He's a little concerned, I would be too, that's steep, and he's a little concerned, I guess, about.
Yeah, my big concern is that
Stand up, please. Identify yourself.
I'm Bobby Rokes, I live at 54 Blake Hill. My big concern is the way they have the road in right now with the logging. It's directly across from my house. My driveway's right down. The town now has a culvert that goes under my dooryard. It's already washed out twice. Now, the town's real good about fixing it, but you're looking at putting a bunch more water washing down that steep hill. Okay? It's not going to be pretty unless you do something there, because you can't run water down that hill. It's going to go right across the road, right down, and right in my front yard. Right in my front door, technically. That's my only concern.
Is this
Okay.
land higher than your land?
Yes, it is. It's on the other side of the hill. I'm on the lower side of the hill.
Yeah, but we're not in charge of drainage. That would be up to the engineer who designed the lots in the town.
You know, it's a concern. If the town wants to fix the road when it washes out every 2 years, that's okay. You know?
But that's not our department.
Okay. All I did was I stopped the town office, voiced my concern. They told me I should show up. I did it.
That's good, but you should voice it with Brad Harriman very strongly.
So, but you know, I'm just saying, when they put it in and it washes out, because you can't put water running straight downhill and expect it to stop. Doesn't work.
They actually can't divert water on your property permission either, because it's already pre-existing.
Right.
So
Yeah,
those are-
and
that's what
then
may
what
become-
recourse do
it
I
may
have
become
other
a
than hiring a
problem for-
lawyer and going to, you know, doesn't make a lot of sense. It makes sense to fix the problem before it happens, not after it happens.
Well, when they start doing the work up there, they're gonna have to do some engineering.
Yeah, I was going to comment, I did talk with Brad a little bit about the runoff, and some of the driveways should be, the angle of the driveways should be set up such that they go in and then make a bend. What you're talking about is the logger just went up there straight, because it was the old logging roadway, and it just continued it.
Oh, yeah.
But if
Up there
somebody.
right now, you can see it running down the walkway and right down the middle of the road.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
If somebody builds, you know, we would recommend, and possibly Brad would, when he went out and laid out the driveway, that you don't have a long straight driveway. You maybe go in 50 feet and then bend. In other words, change the angle.
You're gonna have to
Yeah,
handle it
and-
downhill, but then you're gonna have to handle that water the rest of the way downhill.
Well, that's right. Then the water, you could have more water runoff, so it all doesn't ideally
my
come down
concern.
to the road. Yeah.
And Brad will certainly require
Mhm.
that configuration so that the contours do not allow water to run across the road from these 4 lots. So-
Right, yeah, he mentioned that, that's right.
Well, there's 5 had culverts across that road and those lots.
Yeah, the average grade, like if you look at lot number, well, actually lot number 33 with 80 feet, I mean, you go like where it says TP2 is on 925, TP1 is right near 920, so that's over 80 feet, and you have just 5 feet in grade, so that's roughly maybe a 4% grade.
That's probably the top of the hill. Look at the topo map and look how close the lines are down through there.
Well, you're going from 915 up to 960. 300, 600 feet.
There are a lot of different listings here of grade and slope, and it varies.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's right.
It's just the way it is, like all land is.
Yeah, and the next 3 lots, 3-1 and 3-2 are all steep sloping towards the road, and they're the ones that are.
They're all sloping
Right.
towards the road.
No, but I'm saying those are the steeper slopes, and they're all gonna have to accommodate.
And then the first one is the steep slope right across my house.
Right.
If you put house lots in there, it's doable. You are gonna have to ditch that side of the road, loop them around, and put some culverts down that side, or you're gonna wash the road out. But, again, town wants to fix this, it business.
Well, this is just a subdivision for 4 lots, for individual houses.
Right,
That falls beneath
But-
Steve's jurisdiction and falls beneath Brad's jurisdiction.
right.
If they were actually coming in with buildings on here, then we would have a lot to say about it.
Yeah. But what you do have to say is you defoliated that whole area, so you've got nothing holding that water back until it sells.
I haven't seen it, but
It's.
if they're chipping,
And
I'm
that's
pro-
okay, that's his,
I'm
that's
pro-
his
I'm
timber.
probably-
I don't
my
begrudge
comment
him to
is,
that,
if
but
they're
I'm just
chipping,
saying.
probably not impressed anyway. I don't like
Yeah.
chipping operations.
So,
He's recognizing that's his responsibility.
I wanna go there tonight.
Well, I think the board's input 2 months ago was that they liked this better than building, if you built an interior road and had 12 lots, then you're gonna have a lot more water. The requirement really is about 2 acres, 200 feet.
it doesn't matter how many lots are in there, you got certain square footage,
Right.
certain hill, certain water, it runs. It's that simple.
Well, it runs down to the.
It run downhill, exactly. It's
But-
gonna run downhill.
But my point is, you've used your property to build a home up there. Why
Why?
shouldn't I be able to?
I'm not
I
saying
have
you shouldn't.
65
You're
acres.
not listening to my concern.
Oh, no, I'm
not saying
listening
you
to it.
should. But what I'm saying is,
Now,
Enough.
Your comments are noted.
thank you.
Or I should say, your concerns are noted.
We do have, under subdivision laws, our ordinances, we do have drainage.
non-conforming lots?
These are conforming lots.
Or conforming, I mean, with a non-development. This is not a development.
This,
This is a subdivision, no houses
that's
on the
right,
pictures.
but
I don't believe we have any jurisdiction until they actually come with a plan to put a bunch of houses in. With roads, the whole 9 yards, it's a whole different ballpark.
Basic subdivision. That's it.
That's all it is.
Yeah, that,
problem is, we do not define a subdivision as 2 different things. We don't define subdivision of land as 2 different things. In other words, Roy's saying that we have no jurisdiction over it because they're not planning houses. it's just a subdivision. Well, under our subdivision laws, we have jurisdiction over it.
Right.
There is no difference.
No, the difference is minor and major.
There is no difference of minor and major subdivision.
Relative to being built versus not being built on immediately in the plan.
If you look at your checklist, there is subdivision approval of boundary line adjustment. There is no minor or major. We're in a quorum.
What's your opinion, Steve?
It falls back on me when they get ready to build.
Right.
Yeah. It's my feeling, it always
That's my
has, 10 years
personal
I've been
opinion.
here.
Our,
I've run into it
our
already.
subdivision ordinance states that periodic inspections during construction shall occur at each of the following phases prior to the covering thereof of the continuation of further work. Sub-base culverts and drainage, that's one of the 4 items, so during construction, that will be inspected by,
By
That's
Steve.
during road construction. We're not building any roads with this development.
I'm saying, it's just a subdivision, there's nothing, we're not looking at any building, nothing, so
no,
that falls.
that's for all work. That's not just for road, that's just, has to do with during construction, that's one of the 4 items that's inspected.
By who?
Our inspector.
Thank you.
I did
That
have
was
a
my point.
conversation with Brad, and the outcome was when they sold the lot and they were going to build, we designed the driveway at that time.
I see what you're saying.
Under subdivision ordinance 11.03, drainage
This
sediment
is a
and
no-brainer.
erosion
Right.
control.
No-brainer.
Hey! One at a time, please.
Sorry.
Part, it says subdivision areas by requiring proper provisions for water disposal and protection of soil surfaces during and after construction in order to promote the public health, safety, and general welfare of the community. So it's during the construction process.
Which has nothing to do with us, it's Steve.
Well,
But it,
I understand what Laura's saying, I understand what Steve's saying.
it does fall back on the subdivider
Correct.
who bears the final,
So-
final responsibility.
So if this is,
If he sells lot 3 and then sells lot 3, I can see a drainage problem.
it's still not our concern at this point.
But that would be handled by the code enforcement officer and probably the highway department.
Right. Right.
It's not anything to do with us. All
That
this
is,
man is doing is taking a piece of property and subdividing it in 4
That-
sections.
that is
He may-
correct.
He may never do a thing with it, but he has the right to do that.
that is correct.
Okay? Anyone else comments? I withdraw my conditional motion. And I will let the board do what they please. Someone wants to make a motion to approve the subdivision as
I'll make a motion to approve it as shown on the plan.
I'll second that.
any more discussion. No conditions on the,
No conditions.
no. You don't want it on the plans about the cemetery?
It's already there.
I think
No, it just says burial ground shown. No right of way, no nothing.
Didn't you say there was a right of way already built in? I didn't
Well,
see it here.
it's not on here.
It's not noted.
Yeah,
Justin.
it really isn't noted. I think what I could do would be to bring in a slightly revised plan next time, showing the contours off of the property and making a comment that there is a RSA and there's a right-of-way to the cemetery. That would clarify the public record, and it also would give me some protection if I sold the lot, so the buyer's aware that there is a right-of-way. I think that's a good suggestion.
My other recommendation would be the block for the sign-in, 21 lines, signature, not two.
Okay.
Signature block.
All right, so I'll amend my motion to have the plan noted relative to the cemetery, and then modifying the signature block.
And the contours.
I don't see where we have the right to have them go 200 feet onto other people's property to extend the contours, though. I mean, you're talking 1,000 feet by 200 feet on one side, that's 5 acres of topo.
Well,
You have 5 acres on this side, 5
it's part
acres
of,
on that
it's part
side.
of the subdivision law,
We usually waive it.
and he should ask for a waiver.
Well, I do, in view of the acreage of the lots. That's a good point.
Over you got them. You need a waiver form, right?
Yeah, to go get one.
I certainly could bring that back with the, with the final plan that perhaps talks about the right-of-way to the cemetery.
We can't approve this plan. It'll have to be conditional, Rick. On those
It is
things.
anyways with the other two conditions.
Well, we'll amend it again to include a request for a waiver on the 200-foot.
Extension of
Yeah.
it.
Extending
Second
it
that.
down
I'll second it, yeah.
Are you going to bring in the fire chief's letter?
I did speak with the fire chief. I asked him to prepare a letter. Evidently, he didn't send it in. He said he didn't have any problem at all with it. I went down to the fire station, gave him the plan. He had it stuck up on the wall, and we talked about it, so he doesn't have
I mean,
any. I can ask him for that again, sure.
Yeah.
Be glad to.
And you've got Brad's letter, so
Yeah.
those two are done. You got away with them?
It's in my office.
No, I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
what is the ordinance
Oh,
number?
didn't get that far.
Because we have to vote on the waiver before we can vote on the other.
Fill it out tonight, can't you? Just give him a form, you can fill it out right now, can't you?
Yeah, but we still have to know what the ordinance is that he wants waiver from.
section.
I'm not sure the surveyor saw that when he read the regulations. I know the abutters within so many feet of the boundaries have to be
Right.
notified. But I don't remember that being in there myself, but I don't have a copy
I
of it.
don't remember it being in there either.
Sorry, it's the first time in 10 years I've heard it asked for.
No, won't have to show it.
So we're at a point of approving, as long as he meets 4.
By
Request,
chance,
right?
is it 8.01K? Be on page 20.
Yes. I would say so, because that's
Or
a
is it
natural,
N, the slope?
natural feature.
Rock is significant natural.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right, Laura, and, because it does state 200 feet beyond the subdivision boundary lines.
It says existing buildings, easements, water courses. Doesn't say anything about topography.
And,
N,
Yeah.
and it says those off-site contours may be estimated and noted on the plan. So it's not required as a full-blown survey.
Oh, okay, well, I do request a waiver to that, especially where there's such large lots. There-
It also comes under 9.05 P. Existing buildings, water courses, ponds, ledges, water, wetlands, and other sufficient natural and man-made features on site. Estimated location within 200 feet of the subdivision boundary lines. Also, you're gonna pin all 4 lots, is that correct?
Yes, yeah, they will
Okay.
be pinned prior to next month. He'll show the iron pins. So there's a few more things that,
Whatever, I mean, you put that on plans that, boundary shall be pinned.
right.
He's asking for a waiver. I would say it's 9.05 P.
We got a motion. I'll second.
Okay, I wasn't sure you were making the motion. Yes,
All those in favor? Motion carries. So you don't have to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Now you go to Rick's motion. The cemetery and cemetery right-of-way shall be shown on the map, on the final plan. There'll be another added line to the approval block. What was the other thing you wanted, Rick?
I think we were talking about the waiver, but we already dealt with that.
And the letter from the fire chief.
The letter from the fire chief.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Call for a vote. All those in favor of the subdivision as conditional upon the 3. Motion carries. You have your subdivision, sir.
Thank you very much. And I'll
You,
plan to come back in next month with the,
when you get
When
it
you
done,
get your new plans
Okay.
with everything documented on it, bring it back into me, and we'll get you set up for the next.
okay.
for the
you don't
final
have to
approval.
be here. As long as you supply everything.
Okay, it doesn't necessarily have to come before the board.
It will
It
come
does.
before the
Oh, it'll
board.
come
You
before-
don't have to be.
You do not have to be here.
Oh, I don't have to come, okay, well, thank you.
The chairman will bring it up, say all conditions are met. Any discussion, take a vote.
Thank you very much.
We'll sign it.
You flying coming back or are you gonna represent?
He is coming back, I can go get him.
And I'm here to represent. And you're here to represent, so why don't I thought we were 3 items on the agenda, and we were number 3. Did we skip one? Did we?
Actually, one
these
was
are the additional
asked
ones.
Oh, one, you already took care of one, okay. I think you're on.
I've got one right here. I've got Connie's.
Good. Thank you very much.
Welcome, sir. Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, bottom one.
Yeah, you, and the board has.
When you're ready. Call case number 18-3. Site plan review for Ossipee Granite Recovery LLC owner, 56 Main Street, Ossipee LLC of 56 Main Street, tax map 92, lot 122 is applying for a site plan review to utilize the residence as a transition home for persons who have just completed primary substance use disorder treatment. They are asking a waiver request from section 8.01.2 as follows. 1, the occupants will not be permitted to have a vehicle. Estimate 1 vehicle for staff and 1 for visitor. Additional space is available for parking on site if necessary.
So does that mean they're asking not to have the people have a vehicle, they're gonna allow them to have a vehicle?
This is what they're saying.
The occupants will not be permitted to have a vehicle.
They're asking for a waiver.
They're asking for waivers on those.
Does that mean they want the occupants to be able to have a vehicle? That's what I'm asking. Okay. The way to throw it up, I can interpret that either way. That's why I asked. I'm not a lawyer.
The application for site plan review, I will rule it as incomplete at this time and accepted conditionally. Number 1, that is a state road, not a town road. So DOT has to okay your driveways. Number 2, there's no letter from the fire chief, no letter from the water and sewer.
Mr. Chairman, Jeff Bird, engineer from Concord. We met with the fire department.
Sir, you can meet with the fire department, but until there is on our desk a letter from him, it's your word against his.
I have an email from him from last fall. I have an email from the water department. I have an email, and, I requested the letter. I sent them the plan. We met with them last week. We met with them last fall. I can only request this stuff. I can't make him write the letter, you know?
It's incomplete. That's what the application says that you need. So,
What did he put in your email?
Well, it should be in the package. that you have.
No,
It should be, because I submitted it with the application.
I never saw it.
We met on site today, and we can't write anything up to review what we saw today. Last time he met was with Mike, retired chief.
Correct. Just a moment, Joe.
Good morning, Mr. Byrd. Please accept this email as an agreement that the drive access to 56 Main Street is approved for the type of use that was explained to me at the time of our last meeting
Who was that?
from the fire chief.
Fire chief has nothing to do with DOT.
We,
That is a state road, sir.
I know, but we were talking about the fire department, so. What were we just talking about the fire department?
Yeah.
If he doesn't,
That's from the fire department, not the department.
right,
of
correct?
safety.
And it's from the previous chief, not the chief.
Nonetheless.
If he's chief at the time, it's still illegal.
Right.
You can't throw his
It's
stuff out.
an email, it's not a letter to us.
Well, we can get that.
I mean, there is nothing in our packet, sir.
It's fine, they use emails in court.
And as far as the state DOT goes, they're gonna look at this, this is not a change in use, it's the same use in their eyes as what was
That's
there.
correct, but.
What was there before, so I'll see if they can, if they have an existing driveway permit, but they're not gonna, issue a new permit every time somebody new
No,
moves in
I'm
there.
not saying that. I'm saying
Yeah,
that you're saying it's a town road, it's not.
I
That's old
I
Route
thought it
16.
was, I thought it was at the time, yeah.
No.
We had that
That's all.
conversation last week. with
Last
Barron.
week, yeah.
Yeah, that it's a state road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of changing the plan.
That's not-
That's just changing the number.
Yep.
And in this application, there is no emails from the chief or from,
There is. There, here's the food packet. There is.
I gave it to him.
Okay.
I normally don't copy emails.
Oh, okay. I mean, I didn't know what else to do. They didn't send me a letter, you know, so I,
That's fine.
so you still have not complied with his request, even if he was the previous chief.
what request is that?
Hi Jeff, I looked at the document you sent. There's only one page and no sprinkler plan attached. I will require a sprinkler plan and a statement of how the building will be used.
Right.
So, there is no fire chief approval,
Okay.
even in the emails.
Excuse me, Connie. Just from my own understanding, the sprinkler system is inside the building? Yes.
I don't
So,
know.
what he's looking for is a site plan, I believe. This is the outside of the building.
But the
We are
fire chief-
working, yeah, we are working on that, the fire
The
chief.
fire chief still has to satisfy the site plan
Yep,
regulations.
Absolutely, as a
So,
condition. As a condition, am I correct?
correct. Yes, Joe,
I have input on that. There was a meeting with the zoning officer and the fire inspection, which included the fire chief. It happened this morning. In talking with their facilities maintenance person, they requested a letter from the fire department for Monday.
equal,
Yep.
what are you gonna need further? That's all hearsay.
No,
Until
Sean,
it,
Steve was there.
it is all hearsay as far as the board is concerned, because it's not in a letter form to us.
Okay, I was just gonna let you know that the request was for the letter to happen on Monday.
So, I mean, the letter is not here.
Correct.
It's a requirement of our board.
Correct.
Let's get off it. You may proceed, sir.
Okay, so we were here twice last year, once in September, and we filed a formal application and met with you folks in November. At that meeting, the application was denied and referred to the ZBA because the use was not, you couldn't decide on what the specified use was as listed in the zoning ordinance. So since that time, we did go take it to the ZBA, and we did receive, the variance was granted just last month as a sober living facility transition home.
I will correct you. It is a conditional variance.
Conditioned on meeting the
It is a conditional. So, if you don't finish those, then the variance is no longer valid,
right.
correct? So, when you say you got a variance, you didn't get a variance yet.
Conditional variance.
You have a conditional,
Right.
and the conditions are not met yet.
Right.
So,
Jeff, let me chime in on that. My name's David LaFever. I'm the attorney. I represent the applicant. I appeared in front of the zoning board. The variance has been granted. The
a
variance,
conditional variance,
the
correct?
variance has not been appealed. The variance is now the law of the land. The variance is subject to conditions. For example, like the residence has to be, it can't be co-ed, that sort of thing. You have
I have the decision right
but
here.
this is not a conditional approval like you folks are accustomed to on the planning side, where you say, like you did to this gentleman, we're going to approve it, but you need to come in with a letter from the fire chief. That's a conditional approval like you're talking about. This is not that type of a conditional approval. This is, the use is approved, but you run it in the following way. It's not a conditional use like you're suggesting. So to be clear on that.
I disagree with you, sir.
I don't disagree with him.
I do, because the conditional is conditional. If you don't make the conditions, the variance is null and void.
That is not correct. So that's wrong. If you don't comply with the conditions, it becomes a code enforcement matter. But I will also say for the record that my client has every intention to be complying with all of the conditions of approval. And in fact, we discussed them at length with the ZBA and we were agreeable to them. So those conditions of approval are not an issue.
Then why is the decision written as conditional?
You may want to talk to your lawyer because I don't think you're going to believe anything I have to say.
No, I'm asking you.
But what I'm telling you is there's different types of conditions.
Excuse me. You said you were there. And I was there, and I heard him say conditional variance. The decision is written conditional variance. So, in the state of New Hampshire, I understand the way the RSA is written up. On the planning and ZBA, the conditional is conditional. And it's not.
So I'm going to go back to the example I just gave you folks. You guys just approved a plan that was conditional.
Right.
In order for that plan to be approved, the gentleman has to do some things. He's got to amend his plan, he's got to show the note, and he's got to do all those things. That is not the same type of conditional approval as one a zoning board approves. The zoning board.
He does not have to come back before our board on the ZBA. It's different.
But the zoning board approval says, for example, it mostly regulates the type of residence that they can have, for example, or things like that. These are, you can do the use, and here's the use that you can do. That's why it's conditional. It's conditioned on, you can't have men and women, it can only be men, or it can only be women. You can't have both. So what they're saying is the conditions define the use that's permitted, which is different than what you folks just did about 10 minutes ago, where you conditionally approved the plan. It's different.
I think
when they said conditional, you agreed to make some changes, the things that are listed here. And I think when they said conditional, it was on our approval. And I think we even said that we might add a few things there when it came before the planning board.
Oh,
Correct?
for example.
So I don't think that has anything to.
That's right. One of the conditions is there's a stockade fence, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of flirting between, that's really more planning board jurisdiction, but we agreed to it. And it says stockade fence, but maybe you folks, that's really a planning board item. There's certainly no reason why the planning board can't impose conditions of a site plan like you would in any other site plan case. This is about the use that's approved. And yes, it is subject to conditions, but it is not conditional in the sense of a conditional plan approval. It's a fine line, perhaps. I don't think so, but to put it another way, it is not null and void. It becomes a code enforcement problem if they violate their conditions, which they're not going to do. I mean, it's academic discussion at this point.
Yes, James.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim Rhines, trustee of the James F. Rhines and Brooke W. Rhines Revocable Trust. I was probably one of the strongest opponents of this application simply because I didn't think it was a suitable use. They went through the process. They were successful in getting their variance, and if their second presentation had been as good as their first, I think I would have been much more comfortable. So, and I do sit on the zoning board, though I didn't act on this, and I agree with Attorney Lefevre that it was granted a variance, and that variance was conditioned on certain things, but there's two types of conditions. There's conditions precedent, and then there's conditions subsequent. And I think what you'll find is that the conditions that the zoning board granted were conditions subsequent, meaning the variance is granted and unconditionally, and there are conditions that they have to do that, as Attorney Lefevre said, they become enforcement issues because they agreed to do them. But I think that the variance is valid, and it's valid for 2 years until and unless they didn't act on it. But clearly they're working on one of the conditions was site plan approval, and I think that's why they're here tonight. And I'm just here to listen to the process. But
I'd like to make a comment too. Many of the things that they agreed to, in reading this week a lot on the Disabilities Act, many of the things that you agreed to, they really didn't have to. In fact, if you want to get technical, we're asking them to violate the law. So I think they've done more than what we could expect.
They have been over backwards, in my opinion.
Anyone else?
I think you've taken a pretty nasty tone with it tonight.
Can we step above that, please? Mr. Chairman, just to recap, there were 3 conditions that you've identified for our site plan review. If I'm not correct, a letter from the fire chief, a letter from the water sewer,
Correct.
and DOT.
Correct.
Okay? I just wanted to make sure I understood.
Reaffirming that the driveways are
Still legal.
Yeah, in compliance with DOT requirements.
because it's like the site plan that we did for Route 16 storage. They made them take one driveway out,
Right, right.
so it's a state road.
Soon that.
Anyone else like to make comments? You have
Making that a
any more?
motion, or you just make an observation?
I was just making the observation, just to confirm that what were the 3 items that we identified.
Anything anything else you wish to
No,
say?
I don't think so. I understand that a fence is required by the zoning board and the applicant agreed to it. That hasn't been put on the plan. I wanted to see if there were any issues with the board tonight, and then I would go back and revise a plan and put on anything that we agreed to here, including the fence. So, although there is a fence, existing fence out there, I'm not sure what the plan is to upgrade that. So we have to get together and talk about that. And
Make sure that short K fence, I believe, you agreed to it, the zoning board,
Yeah.
was it not?
Yeah, and it's
Right.
pretty well defined in the decision from the zoning board
Right.
as to what the fence should be. It says shall be erected between the facility and the neighboring school property. So that tells me that it's going to run the extent of the property line to the edge of the school property.
I'd like to throw something out here a little bit, or ask a question. We never defined the height of the fence particularly. And we got an ordinance in this town that anything over 6 foot becomes a building.
Well, it's a structure.
Or a
Go back
structure.
to the ZBA.
And there we go again.
So 6 feet or less.
I should have brought up the ZBA meeting, because I kind of think the fence should be a little bit taller than 6 foot. That's a catch-22.
6 feet is acceptable.
6 feet is acceptable, yes.
I can look over a 6-foot fence.
Yes, Jim.
Jim Rhines again. The only thing I wanted to point out, the existing fence is onto the school property. I think there's places where it goes over the school property and then other
Yes.
places where it's not. And as they're redoing the fence, if they could just, pay attention. We happened to survey the property when the school acquired the area that's now the playground. And when they put up the fence, they went over the boundary line, and the school district, it became aware of it, but they just, hope that it someday, if that gets fixed like it sounds like it's going to now, that it just be on the property. And it's not a huge difference, but it's, 3 or 4 feet down by Main Street, and it trends back and forth, and I think it's probably shown on the plan. Yeah, it's shown how it waxes and wanes in relationship to the property line, but hopefully it would just be kept on their property for the new one.
Well, and the applicant would agree to removing the old fence as a condition of approval and installing a new fence in the location that the planning board says where to do that.
Or building a fence right alongside it on our property, either which way.
Like
obviously
right
it's
along
fine
the
with
property
me.
line. It would be
Yeah.
helpful, though, if the planning board said, here's exactly where we want you to put the fence, because we'll do it that way.
Who owns the fence? The school or the?
School, right?
Sounds like-
The applicant, the predecessor and title to the applicant built the fence.
Oh,
Maybe
okay.
built it onto the wrong
They-
property.
So High Watch,
Built by the old owner.
High Watch,
Onto the
yeah,
school
High Watch
property.
built the fence inadvertently onto the abutter's property.
Understood.
Go right to the line.
Oh, okay.
So they just weren't.
So we'll remove that
If we
fence
ever adopt
and be sure to
15
get the
code,
fence on
then
our
you can
property.
raise that
And-
fence height.
And at the time, my wife and I happened to own the lot, but it was,
We can't have everybody talking at once, please. One at a time.
so again, Jim Rhines, the predecessor and title to Granite Recovery, High Watch, built the fence, and they built it, at the time, my wife and I owned the lot when they built it. We subsequently sold it to the school, but they built it just over the line. And it was not noted until the boundary line adjustment that happened between the school district, my wife and I, and the library, when there was a 3-way exchange that went on so they could build the playground and build parking for the library. And that's when it was discovered that the fence was built over the boundary line.
I'll rectify itself and put the new one up anyways.
Sounds like that's what they're doing.
It just, David will be right. It might be helpful if the planning board maybe even just took one of these plans and marked it up and said, here's where we'd like the fence to be, so that when Mr. Berg prepares the revised plan.
According to code enforcement, you're right on the boundary line.
Right on the boundary line?
And how far back?
Yeah.
Does it go?
Well, based upon the language in the variance from the the zoning board. It says, shall be erected between the facility and the neighboring school property. So if your property
So the whole line.
extends all the way back to school property, then it'll be the full length of your property line. Just to be clear.
If the school property stops short of your line, you stop
Exactly,
at the corner of the
exactly.
school property.
Yeah.
Again, I'm sorry.
Based on the decision of the condition of the variance granted by the zoning board, a stockade fence shall be erected between the facility and the neighboring school property.
I think that's woods back.
Yeah, that gets
Behind the,
pretty dense. Right about here, I believe. The density in here is all wood, so are we talking to
You're
the
talking
beginning of,
from the main street to the end of the school property.
hey Jim,
I'm not sure
do you
that,
know where the school property run this whole boundary?
I
Chain
believe,
link fence,
I
yeah.
believe that it does. I believe it runs actually beyond your property. It goes, but I'd have to look at the tax map, but I forget, because it used to run from there all the way down to Route 16, and then my father subdivided property off, below that.
I mean, we never talked about that. I mean, we never really contemplated that, but it's up to you.
That
Yeah,
would-
that's fine, I mean, I don't see all the purpose in weed whacking through the woods to erect a fence, but we'll do it if it satisfies the board. It's pretty dense forest out there.
I'm not sure that, not to speak for what the zoning board was thinking about when they imposed the condition. We talked about a fence, and we were agreeable to a fence, and I don't know that anybody ever thought about building a fence out in the woods. They're more concerned with, the residential use and sort of the there's not going to be any of this activity happening out in the woods back here, so, but that being the case, you're saying fine, if that's what the board wants.
That's fine, another alternative, maybe running a fence down here to wherever this wood starts,
To the
and then
tree line.
shooting it across the tree line. Is another,
Actually, that makes sense.
That's not up for us to decide.
we'll,
That is a ZBA, excuse me, ruling that you shall go between the neighboring school property.
understood.
Mr. Spofford here is willing to be as accommodating as he can be. I think nobody would dispute that, but, the ZBA's decision doesn't say, for example, that the fence will run, the full length of the property line on the common boundary line. It doesn't say that. In fact, it says that it'll be between the property and the school property. So these conditions, just so you guys know, like the town's lawyer sent me an email with these conditions beforehand, and we talked about them. We're like, yep, this basically looks like what we agreed upon. I participated in the discussion to craft these conditions, and I can tell you that nobody was ever thinking about that. I think this board could very reasonably say, something like Mr. Spofford said, or if you guys want to say run the whole length, you can do that too. I think you have some.
We can't override.
We cannot
Override
override
the
variance.
ZBA. I'm on the ZBA, as you probably
Yeah,
realize
I
by
do.
this point. And we had intention to go the whole length, but you are right, nobody took it into consideration how long the property was on it.
Right.
So one way you can change it is go back to the ZBA, say, can we shop it?
Well, that's right, and so I think what Mr. Spofford's telling me is for purposes of for being here in front of the planning board, we're agreeable to running that fence through the forest and into all the way along the property line. And you maybe, if you wanted to craft your condition that says something like subject to reconsideration by the ZBA, if we want to go back and ask them to change it, we can do that at a later date, or just build a fence.
Well, get on the agenda for next month, it'd be probably a lot easier to get it figured out right away before you start building it.
Well, it's going to take time for all that stuff to happen anyway, so. But for purposes of this board's consideration of the application, Mr. Spofford's agreeable to running it the full length, and then if we need to go back in front of the ZBA and ask for modification of the condition, we can do that.
If he modifies that, does he have to come back here again or not?
Yes, because our site plan will include that
Variance. Yeah.
that variance.
Right.
We have no control over the variance.
That's what I thought.
So he's gonna end up coming back to us.
Mr. Spofford's telling me is he'll just put the fence in.
All right, if that's what you want to do. I think the ZBA, if it's brought up what happened, they would be a little bit more compliant to have you run it out in the woods 50 or 60 feet.
Well-
I don't know that for a fact, but that'd be my guess.
But to answer your question is the critical thing would be the zoning, the condition of approval by this board. This board could say, we're gonna impose a condition that there be a fence, along the full line of the boundary line, unless the ZBA modifies its condition and defines it otherwise. That way we wouldn't have to come back here. You can wordsmith it to make it happen that way. But for purposes of your approval, we're agreeable to the fence running the full length of the property line.
Oh, yeah, it was 3 conditions for sure for conditional approval.
I think that's, I'd like to make a motion that we approve this, as long as they meet.
The 3 conditions, that's
requirements.
where I was headed.
First of all, before you can make a motion to approve it, you've either gotta give the waiver request from 8.01.2.
Make a motion, we grant the waiver request for 8.01.2.
Second.
The 3 things they have on there, number 1 through 3.
Yeah, I see that. Understood. Well, the question is, how many spaces were required? And how many are they asking to waiver?
There's a note on the plan, there's 4 required. Note number 12 on the plan. The regulations require 4 spaces, we have 2, and we'd like to leave it as is, so we're asking for a waiver from constructing 2 more additional spaces.
I'd like to make an additional comment there, just a reminder to the board that the residents will not have vehicles, and the 2 spots are sufficient because we have, as in our zoning approval, 2 staff. So it'll be a spot.
Wow,
staff
visitors
person.
there?
No,
No visitors, okay.
Correct.
So why anything I have was...
Why is the waiver stating 1 for visitors?
Number 2 says estimate 1 vehicle for staff or 1 for visitor.
there may be a staff visitor, for instance, if there are 2 staffers on site.
That'd have to be defined properly, and otherwise we'd have no control over it. And you say visitor could be anybody.
Truth of the matter is, the driveway is long enough. I mean, there's all kinds of parking in there in reality, but to show designated parking as designated parking spaces, I showed 2, because that's what we say we need for the employees, visitors, whatever use. But in reality, there's more than that, but
Maybe Mr. Stopper could just clarify. To the extent the planning board's not really regulating the use so much, okay? But from a parking perspective, there's ample parking. As part of the program, the clients or the occupants, they don't have people coming over to visit, they don't have visitors. That's not part of the.
I understand, that's why I asked the question.
So
You
this,
still gotta show you parking, you're asking for waiver two laws.
Well, and if I can just, and I apologize to interrupt you, but strictly speaking, there is no parking requirement for this use in the ordinance because this use isn't contemplated by the ordinance, which is why we went to the ZBA to get a variance. If there was a parking regulation in place for this use, we probably never would have had to go to the ZBA. I think what Mr. Byrd has done is try to figure out what the parking requirements are for a use that's very similar, that is allowed, and utilize that. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, I specify rest home, nursing home.
For rest home, nursing home. So realistically, we're not really, in that sense, tied to whatever the regulation may be in this.
We still have to figure out from our end to.
And that's why he's throwing two out there, because that's what we need.
To get back to where I was going, you've got the two vehicles, and my question was, what are you using for a vehicle to transport these in the morning and at night to bring them back and forth? Is that one of them two vehicles, or you got a bus coming in?
No, it's one of those white 15-passenger vans.
And now, is that parked down here as one of the staff members, or is that some other
No,
place?
that's parked at Green Mountain Treatment Center in Effingham.
Well, in my opinion, you would need at least 3 parking spots, a place to load the people and the staff parking, in my opinion.
Well, if he's just coming to pick somebody up, they don't need a designated parking
Those
space.
should be out of the way for any type of emergency vehicles or people going in and out, in my opinion.
That's just like a taxi showroom.
Put the loading area. We could put a loading area, there's room on, there's actually room on the existing area to designate. If the plan designated that sort of van loading area, would that be something, we could add that as a condition?
That'd be my approval, I'll work with the board, I'm just thinking it should be a place to load them in and out.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'd go along with that.
I'll cross loading area. It's really just an area on the, it wouldn't be in the parking area, just be an area where the van pull in and everybody get on and then they leave. But the van is not permanently stored there, is what he's saying.
Yeah. That's why I was asking questions.
Well,
That's a good point.
I don't mean to disagree with you people, but I've heard 3 different stories. One, that all the activity was gonna take place up on the mountain. On the weekends, they were gonna be supervised to do this and that. And Sundays, they would have visitors. Now you're saying there's no visitors here. I am very confused because last fall when you were in front of us, you told us one thing, now it's changed. That they were only gonna go to the mountain 5 days a week. 2 days a week, Saturday and Sunday, you would be giving them supervised activities and visiting. Now, no visitors.
They don't have visitors on property down here. They do have visitation that's facilitated.
I'm sorry, speak up.
They do have visitation that's facilitated at Green Mountain Treatment Center, which has nothing to do with this property here. And they're actually in treatment up there.
You never clarified that originally. That's why I'm bringing it up again.
I apologize for not clarifying that.
I mean,
It would be, if you figure there's up to 16 people and each one of these people have a mom and a dad, and maybe they have children, and maybe there's a brother or a sister, a wife or a husband. So you could see that property and looking at it, just common sense, that it would be overwhelming for that facility to accommodate that many people.
I understand that, but I mean, you're saying no visitors, but now you're saying they visit on the mountain, so you have 2 staff members and you only want 2 parking areas. You're only required to have 4. I would say you don't even need the waiver.
Right, I agree. Because if you're using your standards identified on the plans, the four.
You've got ample parking for 4.
Yeah.
So we can withdraw the motion, we're not doing it. No waiver.
No, you vote to waive it down. That's the correct way to do it.
All right.
Well, and then I think that what the applicant would do is withdraw the request for the waiver, and when we do the amended plan, we'll strike 4 spots on there for you. There's plenty of space.
I mean,
I think we just withdraw the motion.
I have a quick question on handicap accessibility.
I don't know,
What parking?
that's parking, they need one.
So we have to, 4, 5?
No.
I think a lot of this is gonna fall with the fire chief too. He's gotta get his rigs in and out.
Right.
So whatever you come up with, he's gonna have
I
to,
mean, if he has four parking spaces, one is designated,
that's a double parking spot.
Right, which is shown on the plan.
And should we revise the motion to waiver not needed, but fire chief letter that they get adequate spaces needed, or what? Be up to the
He'd
fire
have to
chief.
approve. The fire chief would have to approve it. That's just to get his equipment in there if need be.
Right. And based upon the location of the two parking spaces currently shown on your plan, they are not in the loop drive area anyway, they're off beyond it towards the building.
I think if it's great with you that we continue this until August 7th, which is our next meeting. By then, you should have the fire chief's letter and the new, and you can draw up your new plans according to the fire chief's specs. If that's agreeable with you people.
I'd rather see a conditional approval. I'm just asking, you know, if it could be considered. And then we could go to the fire, we could meet these conditions that you're asking for.
Well, the problem I see with that, and Steve has brought this up, is what the fire chief recommends and what we recommend are two different things.
I don't know why the fire chief chimes in on parking. I've never seen that.
It's not only parking.
It's
He
actually-
has to be able to get his apparatus in there.
Yeah, and that's what he did the past fire chief commented on the
I-
access.
You know, like I say, I don't doubt your word,
Okay.
but until we see it in black and white like this,
With his signature.
under his, over his signature, then that's his recommendations. That's what we tell the client. I mean, I
You can still put that as part of the contingency of it though, right?
I would think so.
well,
We do it
what,
all
all
the time.
right, if you wanna give them the conditional approval tonight, what do you wanna give it on?
Then they meet the requirements that we talked about. We've got, what, 3 now?
4 with the
List?
fire chief.
5.
Letter from the sewer, a water and sewer, one from the fire department.
5.
I have a fire chief's letter, water and sewer letter, DOT for the driveways,
The fence.
the fence, and then they're gonna add a bus loading area.
Excuse me. Did we get a survey on that fence? Did we talk about that, on that one line?
They'll have to have a survey to get it back on their own property. Right down the boundary line.
We had a survey done as part of this plan.
So, okay, so it's all.
Yeah. Frank.
Survey just, you look at that, Steve, it shows the fence and the property line, and they don't match.
Well, I had that as 2 conditions. One was to remove the old fence that encroaches onto the neighbor's property. Number 2 was to install the new fence, presumably entirely on the applicant's property.
And 6 foot would be already.
6 foot, that's right, and 6 foot.
Yeah, that would be the proper way to word that, Connie, so that he covers both of them.
I mean,
So we're at
And then strike
6.
the bus loading area and the
the plan will be amended to show the bus loading area and the parking space.
Is there a handicap ramp there now? There is.
There's an access ramp. Yep. Needs some work. I'd have to, if I was handicapped, I'd have to double check.
Correct me
Well,
if
I
I'm
mean-
wrong, that's certificate of occupancy conversation, that's not so much site plan review, that's CO.
The outside of the building
There's a
is-
ramp and making sure that that's up to,
Sir,
that's more up to you,
the outside of the building is our department. The inside is Steve's. If that extends over the eaves, we can technically rule on it, according to our ordinance.
We got fire chief letter.
But
The ramp is shown on
the ramp they show, correct. It's a pre-existing, so we're not gonna change it. Steve might change it, but we won't.
What's the rest of them, Laura? Fire, the fire chief letter, the water and sewer, what else?
DOT for the driveways.
DOT. What else?
Striping the parking and the fence removal and replacement with new fence.
Is your name Laura?
I'm sorry.
What's straight?
Thank you.
Okay. I got fire chief, water and sewer, we got DOT permit. Remove the old fence, new 6-foot stockade fence, what else?
And the plan's gonna be updated to include the bus loading and the parking.
For bus and parking? Hell, if I see what I was doing.
So would you like to remove your request for waiver?
I think he already did.
Well, he
Yeah, I
had,
thought we
he
had,
had 10 points
but
of the
yes,
waiver.
you know, the applicant would formally withdraw the request for a
All
waiver.
right, fine, thank
I
you.
withdraw my,
Roy withdraws his motion.
Yeah, I want to make a new motion.
Who seconded that motion?
I did.
Rick,
Yeah, I did.
All right, Rick,
I'll
you,
withdraw my second.
all right.
I withdraw
So
my
the waiver is now dead. Now you may go on to your
I want to
conditional motion.
make a conditional
approval.
approval with the following, what do you call it?
Condition.
Conditions, thank you. Yeah, we have the fire chief letter, the water and sewer letter, the DOT letter of permit, whatever we need there, the plan updated for bus and parking, remove the old fence, and a new 6-foot stockade fence.
Shall be on their property.
Shall be on their property, obviously.
I'll second that.
Do one more. Update the plan.
What was the other one?
Update the plan.
I thought I read that, it's right here. It said plan updated.
I'm sorry, Roy. Say your conditions again, please.
We got the fire chief letter,
Yep,
water and sewer,
okay,
DOT permit letter.
yep.
Well, the DOT, yeah,
Yep. Remove the old fence, do a 6-foot stockade fence,
on their
And,
property.
plan updated for bus and parking,
On their property for the
and
fence.
have it on their property. At least on the property line.
Yeah. Got them all, Laura.
Mhm.
Do I hear a second?
Rick second.
Rick seconded. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Good luck.
on the agenda.
Hmm?
You sent it to me.
Okay. I wasn't sure if I did it. I
Yeah.
did it.
Matthew L. Magliozzi, Orland, PC. They're a law firm licensed in New Hampshire, Delaware, DC, Mass, Maryland, Minnesota, Rhode Island, Virginia, July 5th. Town of Ossipee, New Hampshire, attention planning board, 1 Moultonville Road, P.O. Box 67, Center Ossipee. 315 Birch Tree Lane, Center Ossipee, New Hampshire, 03814. Tax map 88, lots 3 and 4, aka lots 5, 2, 3, 13, and 52.15, respectively, OPC file number 18-004891. Anybody else could tell anything, finish reading it. All right, dear planning board, this office has been retained by Select Portfolio Servicing Incorporated to clear title to the above-mentioned property at 15 Birch Tree Lane, Center Ossipee, New Hampshire, shown as lots 3 and 4 on tax map 88, owned by Miss Elizabeth Clove, the property. In that regard, attached, please find a letter of representation from SPS authorizing me to speak on behalf. I kindly ask the zoning board to accept this letter and questions contained herein for discussion at this next scheduled meeting and subsequently advise me of the outcome at its earliest convenience, as I am unable to attend the meeting in person. My client is attempting to enforce its mortgage on the property by way of foreclosure, but unable to do so without constructively subdividing the tax parcel previously merged to the attached notice of merger dated March 16, 2010. The mortgage on the property only describes lot 52.13 as identified the notice of merger, aka lot 3 on the tax map 88. Foreclosure on the same will remove lot 52.13 from common ownership, with lot 52.15, aka lot 4 and tax map 88. I respectfully request submit to the planning board are as the following. Will the planning board assess fines, penalties if my client forecloses his mortgage on lot 52.13, thereby constructively subdividing the current tax parcel? And will the planning board undo the tax parcel merger after my client's foreclosure sale was complete, since lots 52.13 and 52.15 will no longer be common ownership? Should you have any questions or require additional documentation, please do not hesitate to contact me. Very truly, Matthew Maglione. As far as I'm concerned,
A lot of stuff that we can't do.
we cannot. The question I have is there two
Sounds like the property owner's got them twisted up pretty good.
not really. Because when you merge with the other lot, you automatically own it both as one piece.
Right. So if they, technically speaking, they would have to come in with a subdivision application, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Regardless of.
That's my interpretation.
As it is mine, because I spent the afternoon looking at this thoroughly just because of that question, because I've never seen this come up before. And it sounds like they would have to come in and ask for a subdivision.
According to our text, and I don't know whether they're taxed as two separate parcels or not.
We can't levy fines and penalties either.
No.
Church Tree Lane. I vaguely remember that.
I mean, I don't know what a water bill's doing in here.
Supposed to collect that too, are we?
Yeah.
That could well be why they're foreclosing, attacking on somebody else.
That's possible, yeah.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
It was
See?
personal, but it did.
Well, I don't think this is our jurisdiction right there, personally.
No, I think that's something that Rick Sager needs to take a look at.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, in order for them to satisfy any requirements we would have to respond to his questions, he would have to file a subdivision plan to subdivide that lot back to the two parcels that they were before.
If they wanted to do that.
If they wanted to do that.
But he's saying because they merged,
After the purchase.
which
We're gonna table it until they can come here before. the
they
board
can't,
can
they're in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Well,
Not happening.
I think a letter from Rick Sager
No.
saying we can't
it'd be
do
a
it.
while before they get here.
No,
Hold on.
when you merge two pieces of property,
Right,
they become one.
right.
So thus the house and the second lot now are
One
one
property.
lot,
Property, right.
one property. What he's trying to do is say to us, well, you subdivide them so we can foreclose. No, you foreclose and you own the property,
Yeah.
which is one property.
Well, see, the thing is, we don't know whether the property that was mortgaged was only one lot or both lots, and that's
It was
not
one
our.
lot.
Don't make any difference.
Doesn't make any difference.
Once you put one piece, the mortgage is the whole thing.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
Oh, yes, correct, you are right, you are right. Once you've merged the two lots.
yes, Steve.
We've
We're
had
pretty
this
familiar
discussion
with the
before.
properties down there, aren't we?
I-
We're pretty familiar with the properties in that area,
Mm-hmm.
so that's gonna go back to the ZBA, but they're not gonna meet the qualifications for a subdivision.
Nope.
And we know that.
Well, weren't they two separate lots?
They were two separate,
No,
they're
what
merging.
he-
Now, if you wanted to bring them back, you need that 200-foot with a 1 acre, that's,
Right.
That's no
What
subdivision out
what
there.
he's talking about is that isn't the Ossipee housing development, which was owned by the town. Randy Lyman sold off the lots with stipulations. She sued the planning board because the planning board would not subdivide the way she wanted to do it. So, she went to court, she won. But, once it passed the first owners, then it became had to be brought up to the town ordinances. Am I correct, Steve?
Correct.
Because Steve and I went around and around about this, and I finally went down to the registry and got the court order and gave it to Steve. So, there are two pieces of property like that on Birch Tree. One was Carol Tudman's, and she owned two pieces. She got foreclosed on. And this one, and Alan Reserve bought the corner on Birch Tree Lane.
Were the other two pieces merged as well, just out of curiosity?
Carol.
Tubman?
Yeah.
Was Tugman's,
Two lots.
she merged those two lots?
I don't know.
No, they're
I
two
think
separate. She never merged those properties.
she didn't.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
believe so.
No, so they could build on that.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah. So he's basically asking us to unmerge these two properties, and that's,
Can't do it.
yeah, we can't do it.
Yes, Joe.
I apologize for being, I'm sorry, I was out there. Are you talking about Birch Tree Lane?
Yeah.
Is this just informal right now, or has it been, letters sent out?
You can speak your mind.
I'm sorry?
Speak your mind.
No, I walked into the middle of the conversation and heard about the Birch Tree Lane stuff. I'm just wondering if this is informal, or should there have been letters sent out already informing of others? Or is this just informal?
The lawyer asked two questions. Will the planning board assess fines, penalties if my client forecloses on his mortgage on lot 52.13, thereby constructively subdividing the current tax parcel? Well, we can't.
I missed part of what you were talking about, sorry.
It's not a formal hearing, there was no need for letters to go out.
Thank you.
But he's only asking to,
But I'm also a part of that, so that's why I'm asking.
So based upon what we're discussing, Connie, it looks like the answer to both of his questions is no. You know, because we're not going to be assessing fines and penalties, and we can't undo the parcel merger.
So he needs to file a petition to acquire title to the second piece.
I don't
no,
know.
because it's merged with the first piece.
Yeah.
They're already on D, so he gets the whole thing.
I make a motion that we write a letter, Laura. Pens a letter under our auspices to the attorney. The planning board does not assess the fines or penalties. One. If your client forecloses, you will not be subdividing the current tax parcel. And two, three, we will not undo the tax parcel merger after the foreclosure unless a formal application is submitted and it meets all current zoning ordinances of the town of Ossipee.
I'll second that motion.
I don't, how to otherwise tell them.
Right?
I
No, I think this is the right move to make, because this is definitely a legal question that we're not equipped to handle.
No, I mean, we have no authority
Exactly, that's what I mean.
to do what he wants us
Yeah.
to do.
No,
Plus, as Rick reads this, he will see that there's some statements here that are not correct, but that's his.
Well, I mean, we won't
We
get,
can't, no, we can't.
we won't get Rick involved unless,
they come back.
Right,
I mean, that's not, it's in their court.
that's what I'm saying, yeah.
They're the ones that have to foreclose. They're the ones that have to learn the laws that say you can't undo something by, you know,
Right.
and if you get screwed in the end, that's your problem.
And even if they come up, even if they come back before the board later on with the proper paperwork, I think it's going to the ZBA anyways.
Well, the question here is that what he's asking us to do, we can't do.
No, we can't.
Yeah.
So we made that, I made the motion, it's been seconded. Any more discussion on it?
Nope.
I call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion carries. Me, 10 minutes to the witching hour.
Motion to adjourn?
No. This letter from Department of Environmental Services on the amendment consists of change of ownership from Gary Cohn to Brad Layton. I would like Mr. Layton to come in. First, let's see. The 3rd of September to, and we should send him a formal letter on
September 4th.
this 4th.
3rd is Labor Day.
Not the 4th, correct. The 3rd is Labor Day. Yeah. With his plans for the gravel permit so that we can get this thing straightened around.
Now, does he have to come in and bring us plans at this point?
He's working on updated plans, actually.
Okay.
I have talked to him several times.
What we're trying to do, and I think, Laura, you're gonna bust Rick's chops again. Rick was asked, how do we go about releasing Mr. Combs' $32,000 or whatever the figure is that he put up where he is no longer the owner, and yet the property is not reclaimed. So we can't release the money unless Mr. Layton puts up.
He is actually talking to Seger about the money and everything right now. He's in contact with Rick, all 9 yards.
That doesn't do us any good because,
So that's when you get the paperwork straight, he'll be here.
well, I'd like to see him in September 4th. That'll give him a month and a half.
Yep. Letter that says, if you can, ask him if he can make it, respond one way or the other, he will respond. He was very good about returning my calls, and he's been calling me, let me know what he's been doing.
Did you do the inspection back?
Yeah, nothing's changed up there. He's taking a little bit of it, not much, just enough to keep it legal. And Rick and I also went out into Fritz's pit, Fred's, And re-inspected that really good the other day. I don't know why he put over 5 acres, because there was no new ground opened up since the last time the whole planning board was down there.
I don't think Fritz knows what 5 acres is, but
About the problem. It was actually Ron that did it. I talked to him. Well, I just tried doing an estimate. I says, why would you put over 5 acres when you haven't even done any more than you've already had open to begin with, when all of us inspected it several years ago? Well, I was just looking around. I says, yeah, you almost toasted yourself.
So I'm assuming then that the previous owner is looking for the ability to have his money.
Passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry, but
Yeah,
I was
hey.
the estate to be able
this
to.
is, when we started going over the gravel pits, and found out that the Barry pit and the Colin pit were both out of date.
Oh, right. But I mean, on this one, it was just the reclamation dollars.
It suddenly dawned on me, and we sent a letter to Colin, came back deceased. I talked to Harry, found out approximately how much money he's got in there. Then I talked to Rick Sager and said, hey, look, what do we do?
I got you.
How do we get the money
From the previous owner.
from Colin back to his estate and Leighton, who was taking it over,
Posting.
posting a new
I
fund?
see what you're saying.
How do we get all this?
Yeah, I hear you.
Because actually, who do we give the money to?
It's being worked on right now.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Including the replacement money.
you know, I
Oh, you mean when somebody posts reclamation funds, it's got to go into some account, someplace in the town.
the town
somewhere.
treasurer,
We have the money.
Yeah.
we have the money, the town treasurer has,
Right.
and when they give that money cash, they have the option of a CD or a savings account.
Right.
Harry has control of that.
Got it.
But the problem is, who do we give Coleman's money back
Oh, I see what you're saying.
to?
I was thinking the issue was how do we go about getting the reclamation funds from the
Yeah.
new owner? Okay.
Make a motion,
I'm fine.
adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
Passed away.